Hello, and welcome to this New Jersey Cultural Trust and New Jersey Historical Commission webinar about the fiscal year 26 Cultural Trust Grant Opportunity. I'm Izzy Kasdan, Executive Director of the New Jersey Cultural Trust. I'm here with Avery Weirs, the Cultural Trust Grants and Operations Coordinator, and Nicole Primiani, Chief Programs Officer for the New Jersey Historical Commission. While this webinar is pre-recorded, we are available by phone and email, or you may schedule an appointment for in-depth questions. This mini webinar is part 3 of a 5-part series about this grant program. In this video, we will discuss the application process, the components of the application, and grant writing tips.
We will begin with an overview of how applications are reviewed. First, you submit a Declaration of Intent to Apply, or a DOI, which is a short form outlining your project category, project activities, project cost, and project timeline. Once you have submitted your DOI, Historical Commission staff will review it and contact you about eligibility concerns. Once your DOI is determined to be eligible, you will be given access to the full grant application in Sage. Once you've submitted your full grant application, Historical Commission staff will prepare for the panel deliberation and review process. Applications are thoroughly reviewed for eligibility and forwarded to panelists. Eligible grant applications are read, discussed, and evaluated by review panels made up of independent experts. The panel convenes virtually to evaluate the applications in strict accordance to the criteria as published in the grant guidelines. Once all applications are evaluated by the panel, their recommendations are forwarded to the Historical Commission's Grants and Prizes Committee for deliberation, informing recommendations to the Cultural Trust. Those recommendations will be voted on at a Historical Commission board meeting in the fall. Then the recommendations are brought to the Cultural Trust Board at their meeting in November 2025 for final vote. The Historical Commission will notify applicants that were recommended for an award after their board meeting. Following the November 2025 Cultural Trust Board meeting, successful applicants will receive final notification of their award from the Cultural Trust. Please review and reference the evaluation criteria before and during the preparation of your application. Be sure your materials have addressed the points that will be evaluated. Independent review panels evaluate applications in accordance with these uniform criteria. Number 1, stability or capacity challenge. You must articulate a specific, real, and significant challenge to the organization's stability or capacity. Number 2, project plan. The proposed project must be sufficiently detailed and specific, demonstrating a firm understanding of the mechanics of the project in order to successfully complete it. The intended project outcomes must be clear and follow logically from the project activities. Number 3, project suitability. The proposed project must be an appropriate solution to the identified stability or capacity challenge. The proposed project must align with your organization's overall strategic planning and financial health as a logical next step. Number 4, project feasibility. The proposed project budget in quotes must be reasonable, realistic, and sufficient to complete the project. The identified expenditures must be appropriate to the project. The specifics of this criterion will vary based on the project category you apply in, and they will align with the required support materials for the project category. For projects involving consultants, the identified consultant must be appropriate and suitable to the project. For projects involving equipment or software purchase, the proposed purchases must be appropriate and suitable to the project. For projects requesting support for staff or board development, the enrollment costs are appropriate and the training curriculum is suitable to the project. For projects adding a new staff position, the job description must be appropriate and suitable to the project. For projects requesting cash reserve or working capital funds, the board policies for managing and replenishment of the fund must be appropriate and reasonable. For projects requesting debt or deficit reduction, the plan to avoid a recurring deficit must be appropriate and sufficient. Additionally, you must show that your organization has the necessary infrastructure, capacity, and organizational commitment in place to support the project or provide a reasonable plan for obtaining the needed resources. Number 5, project impact and sustainability. You must show that the project as proposed will result in significant improvement to the long-term stability or capacity of the organization. You must also provide a sufficient plan for how the gains from the project will be sustained after the grant period. Please keep these criteria in mind as you complete your application. Your criterion aligns with a narrative topic that you will address in your grant narrative, as well as specific support materials. You will find a rubric on the Cultural Trust website showing which criteria align with which narrative topics and application materials. Again, there are 5 key areas of evaluation that align with the narrative topics. If it's helpful, you can think about them in the following ways. Stability or capacity challenge and project plan are the what of your project in terms of the problem you are solving and the project you propose. Your project suitability is the why of your project. Why the project is the best available solution to your problem. Project feasibility is the how of your project. How exactly you will complete the project by detailing expenses and activities. Project impact and sustainability is the so what of your project. In what ways will the project support your long-term stability and capacity?
The IFS History and Humanities program can support a wide range of eligible projects and expenses. Within these, the project categories of debt and deficit reduction and establishing or growing a cash reserve or working capital fund are unique and function a little differently from typical project-based grants. In addition to the other mini webinars, please refer to mini webinar number 5 for more details about how the evaluation criteria are applied to these specific project types. Please also reference the additional guidance document for these project categories, which is linked in the grant guidelines and posted on the Cultural Trust's website.
On this slide are important dates and deadlines in this grant cycle. During May, June, and July, technical assistance will be available. The Historical Commission and the Cultural Trust are offering live grant application workshops and multiple Zoom office hours sessions. More on that later in this webinar. On April 30th, 2025, the Declaration of Intent to Apply became available in Sage. On June 11th, 2025, the DOI will be due in Sage at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Also on June 11th, online applications for qualification will be due. As a reminder, this is a separate online form available through the Cultural Trust website. If you have any questions about your qualification status or the qualification application, please contact the Cultural Trust or view our separate qualification technical assistance materials. If you are not currently designated qualified, it is extremely important that by June 11th, you submit both a qualification application and a declaration of intent. On July 16th, 2025, the Cultural Trust Board will meet to approve qualification applications. On July 17th, full grant applications will be due in Sage at 3 p.m. Requests for extensions to the deadline will not be permitted. From July to October, the Historical Commission will convene the independent panels and craft their recommendations. In November 2025, the Cultural Trust will take action on the recommendations and announce grant awards. January 1st through December 31st, 2026 will be the grant period for the funded projects. Any materials submitted after the application deadline will not be accepted. Requests for extensions to the deadline for any reason will not be permitted.
All parts of the Cultural Trust's grant process are driven by the SAGE online grants management system. All DOIs and grant applications are submitted and reviewed in SAGE, and successful applicants will also manage their contracts and file final reports in SAGE. Those reports will be managed by the Cultural Trust. And that brings us to the DOI and application itself. The Cultural Trust application is made up of several components. The guidelines are the key to help you successfully fill out the narrative and each of the forms and charts that make up the application. Please visit the Cultural Trust website at culturaltrust.nj.gov to download your own copy of the guidelines so that you have them on hand while you work in SAGE. You can access the SAGE website at njsage.intelligrants.com. That URL is on the screen now. If you need assistance with SAGE at any time during the grant process, please reach out to Izzy or myself for help. Please also consult Part 4 of this mini webinar series, which walks through some key components of SAGE.
The DOI is a short summary of your project, which Historical Commission staff use to ensure that your organization and application are both eligible within the program before you proceed to a full grant application. There are 4 key parts of the DOI. Basic organizational information, such as your tax ID number, contact information, and whether your organization has been designated qualified by the Cultural Trust. Basic project information, such as the project category and the estimated budget and time frame. A brief summary of the stability or capacity challenge to your organization that the project is intended to address. A brief summary of the proposed project and how it will address the challenge. The DOI must be submitted in SAGE no later than June 11th, 2025 at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. The DOI is required for this grant program. Any organization that does not submit a DOI will not be able to submit a grant application. Please note that while some specifics of your project may change from the time you submit your DOI to the time you submit your full application, the project category you select in your DOI cannot change. If you submit a full application for a project in a different project category than the approved DOI, your application will be deemed ineligible. For the full Cultural Trust application, here are some important parts to note. The narrative section is the heart of your application. It should clearly and concisely communicate your organization's stabilization or operational capacity challenge and project plan to the panel. It should provide solid and direct context for the other materials in the application. The narrative should directly address the Cultural Trust's specific narrative topics, which are in the guidelines. The narrative topics correspond to the evaluation criteria we discussed earlier. Please reference the rubric linked in the guidelines and on the Cultural Trust website to see how each narrative topic aligns with each evaluation criterion. The criteria are the lens through which the review panel will evaluate your application. We recommend using the narrative topics as section headings. This will help the panelists follow the narrative and is much easier for panelists to read than a solid block of text. Your narrative should also specifically reference the budget charts and your uploaded and linked support materials. A strong application is one in which all of the components work together to tell the same story. As with the evaluation criteria, it may be helpful to think of the narrative topics in the form of broad questions. What? What is the challenge and your proposed project? Why? Why your project is the best available solution to the challenge. How? In what ways you will complete the project. So what? In what ways the project will support your long-term stability and capacity. The application also requires board and staff charts to capture the operating model and your organization and key personnel. In addition, the application requires multiple budget forms, including expenses and income for the project, and your organization's complete finances. All proposed project expenses must be documented. Required and optional support materials play a significant part in the evaluation process by reinforcing what is presented in the narrative. The support materials are important tools that provide the panel with a complete picture and basis for evaluation. Applicants are required to submit specific support materials depending on their project category and may submit up to 3 optional support materials. Detailed information is found in the support materials section of the guidelines to help put together the best possible selection of materials, as well as the materials that are required for your specific type of project. If you need help from program staff, support is only a phone call or email away. Don't forget that the maximum file size you can upload is 13 megabytes. Do not submit links to password-protected sites or pages, and make sure all links are working properly. And don't forget to include a link to your website. Be sure to include all relevant and required information about your organization and project in your application materials in Sage. Reviewers will not see any other documents previously submitted to the Cultural Trust or to the Historical Commission, including your qualification application. We strongly encourage you to submit your application well in advance of the due date. You may not submit any materials after the application due date, which is July 17th, 2025 at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Late submissions will not be accepted for any reason.
One frequent topic of questions has to do with the financial documents required as part of the support materials. Organizations must submit their 2 most recently completed audits or Form 990s as part of their grant application. Small organizations that file 990Ns must also provide balance sheets for the same years as the 990Ns they upload. It is very important for organizations providing 990Ns to remember to also provide balance sheets. Balance sheets are often confused with profit and loss statements. A balance sheet, also known as a statement of financial position, is a snapshot that summarizes your organization's assets and liabilities, what you own and what you owe. A profit and loss statement, or P&L, summarizes your organization's revenues and expenses for a given period of time, money in and money out. We require balance sheets. P&Ls do not meet the requirements of the grant program. We'd like to leave you with a few grant writing tips. First and foremost, read the guidelines thoroughly and call program staff if you have any questions or if something is not clear. Give yourself ample time to complete the application. There are a lot of components that make up an application. Make sure you and your team take the necessary time to understand the guidelines and compile the materials and documentation you need to fully complete the application. You won't be able to provide information after your application is submitted, and incomplete applications won't move forward. So please give your application the time and care it deserves well in advance of the deadline. Craft the narrative using the narrative topics and the evaluation criteria. Be specific and clear. Successful proposals provide full responses to each of the narrative topics. It is a good idea to write the narrative in a Word document and then cut and paste it into Sage. Help the panelists fully navigate your proposal. Label your support materials accurately, use topic headers, adequate spacing, and avoid jargon and the overuse of acronyms. Be sure to cite specific support materials and/or budget line items within the narrative, calling attention to how your narrative aligns with and corroborates your budget charts and support materials. For example, if you cite in your narrative that you are engaging outside experts, make sure those fees are reflected in your project budget and explained in the budget notes, and be sure to upload their proposal and credentials in the support materials. If you're proposing to purchase a number of pieces of technology, hardware, and software, be specific in your narrative about what you will purchase and why. Make sure those costs are reflected in your project budget and explained in the budget notes, and be sure to upload the documentation of those expenses, such as PDFs of the online retail listings, in the support materials. Don't assume the panelists know your organization. It's most likely that they do not. It's always a good idea to have someone who is not affiliated with your organization go through the application. Chances are, if that person has a question, someone on the panel may have one too. Make sure you're communicating about your project and your organization to the best of your ability. Give the panelists the information they need to fully understand your organization. For example, use the budget notes to fully explain your financial health. An organization with a deficit or carrying a debt is not uncommon. Panelists are more concerned with the relationship of the deficit or debt to the overall budget and other assets, and whether the organization has a realistic, detailed plan for its reduction and eventual elimination. The relationship of the budget to the activities described is also important. Be true to your costs. We want you to detail the real costs of doing business. Make sure you detail budget line items that contain multiple expenses. Our budget forms are not one size fits all, and budget notes explaining where certain budgetary items are calculated is important. Please take note of these upcoming technical assistance opportunities. The Cultural Trust will be hosting Zoom office hours during which applicants can join and ask questions related to their project ideas, declarations of intent, and applications. Participation is free, but registration is required. You can register for these sessions on the Cultural Trust's website. Prior to attending office hours, applicants should read the guidelines thoroughly. The Cultural Trust will also offer 2 live Zoom workshops about the fiscal year 26 grant program, where applicants can learn more about the program, hear from past grantees about their projects, and ask questions related to their project ideas, declarations of intent, and applications. Again, participation is free, but registration is required. You can register for these workshops on the Cultural Trust's website.
Please visit the Cultural Trust's website and read the guidelines to determine if this grant program is right for your organization. Reading the guidelines will answer most of your basic questions and is the #1 tip that we can offer you. Reading the guidelines will tell you everything that we can think is important to know prior to completing the application.
That concludes this mini webinar about the Cultural Trust's fiscal year 26 IFS History Humanities Grant Program. If you want to learn more about the fiscal year 26 IFS History Humanities Grant Program, please check out the rest of this mini webinar series. Other videos address applicant eligibility, project eligibility, and instructions for using SAGE, the state's electronic grants administration system. Contact information is on the screen for Nicole, Avery, and myself. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out.